Someone who I really admire and who I really look up to. You've actually had him on your podcast, which I've
David
listened.
Goggins,
David Goggins,
of
and
course.
I read his book as well, and he said that at one point, they try the instructors try their best to make you quit, right? To push you and keep pushing you. And at one point, he was just smiling at their face, and he was like, "I took their soul." And he said something about like taking their soul, and he said that that instructor did not sleep that night.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's like you're literally like him, or like he's like you. You both have that uncommon mindset. It's something about like the SEALs. I feel like the things SEALs go through, they're literally different to anyone else on this planet. Like
Yeah,
I
very
remember,
unique.
yeah, I remember you were on a podcast with Tom Bilyeu, is it?
Bill View, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, great guy. I love Tom.
yeah, such a great person to listen to as well. And you were talking about the color system. Can you just
Hmm.
elaborate on that as well? Because I know that was a fun
Sure.
story you had there with the rest.
There's so many skills that we learn that are just incredibly valuable for just everybody today. So I'm glad you asked that. And it's one of the reasons that I really started to teach. First, I started teaching SEALs. I wanted to make SEALs better, more complete warriors, make better decisions on battlefield, be more survivable, get through SEAL training. And of course, all spec ops, including a lot of British SAS would come over to our training. But then I opened it up with my company, Unbeatable Mind, so that we could train general population in these skills because, like you said, they're unique. Not only are SEALs unique individuals to be able to endure the training and to all the experiences they get and how they learn to manage their mind and focus and all that, but they learn some really unique tactical and adaptive skills that we call help us operate in an environment we call VUCA environment. VUCA is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, which is what special ops battlegrounds are always like. And so, one of the skills we start learning early in buds is situational awareness, being able to take in more information and to look for patterns that might come together that either declare that there's some sort of danger or opportunity or information that's valuable. So, we're always scanning, looking for information, and just collecting information. No matter whether we were on a training mission or a real mission, each one of us is an intelligence gatherer while we're also a combatant. And so the Cooper color system was named after a guy named Colonel Cooper, an Army guy. And all it was like an internal a system to codify your internal radar. And so he said that white, the color white is akin to your radar being turned off. And the only time a SEAL was had their radar turned off is if they were like completely shithouse drunk. And even if that were to happen, the SEAL was usually smart enough to have friends who were not and who were scanning the environment for threats. 'Cause even that idea of sleeping with one eye open,
Yeah.
that's not white. That's something different. That's like you're ready. So white is sheep. You're a sheep. You're not ready. This stands for the average population that is just going about their business completely ignorant, face buried in their iPhone or their social media account, clueless that they're being manipulated every step of the way, clueless that the wolves are just circling them, ready to pounce. That's white, and that's 99.9% of the global population. So if you're listening to this and you're in white, then you need to listen closely and get out of white and get into yellow. Now, yellow is where you switch on your internal radar. And the radar is a metaphor for, like a military radar. If you ever seen, the TV shows where the boat or the airplane has a radar and it's like the scan goes around and it's just going around and it's passive. Like you don't see anything unless there's a target and then that pings, right? It's like a yellow dot or a green dot and you hear a little ping, especially in the submarine movies. So yellow, living in yellow is as a SEAL becomes our natural state. We train to always be looking for information, always to be scanning for threats, not walking like sneaking around corners and stuff like that, but just expecting that there might be a threat. And so this shows up as like whenever I go to a restaurant, my wife knows enough now that we choose a table in the back and I sit with my back to the wall so I can scan the entrance and I can scan the restaurant while I'm enjoying my meal. Because, right, somebody has to be aware If a lone gunman walks into that, or if some threat is going to come into that establishment, I have an opportunity to save a lot of lives, and at least to save my wife and I.
Mm.
That's one example. I teach people this, and I've had people come to me and say, you know what, this is probably one of the most valuable things you taught me. We call them sheepdog skills, because the sheepdog is the one that can protect the sheep from the wolves, right, in society. And so this color system and situational awareness is one of the most powerful sheepdog skills, along with those other skills I talked about: the breath control, the positive self-talk, the imagery, and then the micro goals, being able to just focus on the thing right now that you can do that's going to move you towards safety and away from danger. But I have friends or students who were involved in like mass shootings at Las Vegas, and they called me and said, "Man, you're not going. I can't even believe how valuable your training was, because I immediately sensed there was danger. I got my family and everyone around me under cover. Cover is going to block the shooter's view.
Mm.
Kept them safe. He kept them calm through breathing."
Wow.
By getting him, to slow down and to breathe deeply, and he got him out of the danger zone. Right. I had a principal of a high school call and say that he stopped a mass casualty incident because he was able to breathe deeply, and he was scanning and the environment always. And, he got a text that said there was something strange about this one guy who's wearing military pants and had a larger backpack. And so instead of like cowering fear or dismissing it, or calling and waiting for, somebody to show up, which is what these, most people would do, he went right into that classroom, right up to this guy,
Wow.
grabbed the bag away from him, grabbed him, took him out of the classroom. And sure enough, he had weapons in his bag and more in his car. And he just completely interdicted a potential disaster. So yellow is you're scanning, scanning, scanning. But like in the situation I just told you about,
Mm.
both situations, if you hear a gunshot or someone texts you and said there's something weird, then suddenly you go to orange. And orange is where you ping a threat. Like your scanner is passively, everything's fine, but I'm alert, I'm aware, I'm going about my business. And then ping, there's a threat. And now your attention collapses to that threat.
Mm.
Right. And you're like, I got to deal with this threat right now, because this thing is, it's a potential serious crisis.
Mm.
Now, you haven't taken massive action just yet, because you still got to investigate the threat. Like if I ping a threat coming into a restaurant, like an aggressive person, and maybe he's walking toward another table and it looks like there's going to be something serious going down. Now I'm in orange, but I haven't shifted to red, which is action, yet, because I'm still not quite sure what's going to happen.
Mm.
And because he might just veer off and be going to the bathroom, right? He must be like, holy shit, I got to get to the bathroom. This is an emergency,
Yeah.
you know? Or he might be going after somebody, in which case I would shift to red and get up and, into an offensive, situation where you take action. So red is action. So
Mm.
white is passive, completely ignorant.
Mm.
You're ignoring signals out there that there's threats. Yellow is you're not ignorant, you're passively scanning for threats. You're always scanning, or you're actively scanning. And I should say you're actively and passively scanning, which are two different skills. One is looking and the other is receiving information, which are two different. And then orange is a threat is pinged. I got to go do something about this, probably, but I'm going to wait for the right signal. And that could be an internal signal that said, go, 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 or it could be something, that develops on the battlefield, so to speak. And then red is massive action. It's a pretty cool little system, but the most important part about it is actually training yourself to be in yellow, orange, and red, right? And there's different types of training, right? Because a lot of people will, because of the fight or flight, even if they can see that there's a threat, they won't do anything about it, right? They'll freeze. And so you have to train your psychology and physiology to either fight or to evade, right? The the difficult situation, which requires some skills training. That's why I'm a big fan of self-defense training like Krav Maga or target focus training,
Mm.
because they're like, or what I trained, which was called SCARS, Special Combat Aggressive Reactionary System, which is SCARS and target focus training are two variants of the same thing. I'll come out of Sansu Kung Fu, and they're just violence of action, get shit done type self-defense systems. It's not a martial art by any stretch of imagination like my karate was. In fact, I had to unlearn a lot of my karate skills when I learned those. So those types of things for men and women are really valuable because they help you understand how to scan both passively and actively, and then what to do if suddenly you're the object of a wolf's attention, right? How do you prevent yourself from being a victim?
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it's not that hard because wolves actually are looking for easy prey. They want to prey on sheep. And even we've had people, even with 1 weekend of training, basically they will never be sheep again, right? They've learned enough skills and they have enough confidence to know that they can take some action against that wolf, and that wolf usually will just walk away or run away. They're not prepared to deal with that.
That's
So
awful.
everyone listening should arm themselves up because we're in a VUCA world, and I don't want you to walk around scared. I just want you to walk around confident. There's
Mm.
a big difference between paranoia and confidence. And I have to tell you, it wasn't until I learned fully how to defend myself by taking another life that I never ever had another altercation, ever had another situation where someone threatened me,
Wow.
because it just that became the new fabric of my matrix, my creation. So I created a new reality with my self-confidence. I said, I will never be anyone else's victim. I will never be the subject of someone else's story. I will never be a sheep that's preyed upon by a wolf. And I have the skills to ensure that. And as
Mm.
soon as I started to really believe that, never again was I ever subject or party to any type of violent affront. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. That's
That's how the world works. We create the reality we live in, but it's got to be backed by belief. And so
yeah.
confidence in your ability to be a sheepdog and defend yourself and others is the only way to actually end violence. And I think that, you know, this is an interesting subject that we could continue to talk about, but I don't want to go down too much in the rabbit hole.
No, of course, no. I'd love to be a fly on the wall when a bunch of Navy SEALs walk into a restaurant. They all
Yeah, it's
just
kind of fun.
sprint for the wall, right? That's so funny. Yeah.
They're pretty easy to pick out. I mean, not at an individual level, but how we operate as a pack
Yeah.
is really different. But you could be standing next to some guy and think, well, that guy's pretty normal. Could be sitting next to a SEAL in church and not recognize it until you look in his eyes. Or in the future, there'll be female Navy SEALs. There aren't any yet.
Yeah.
But there's something about a Navy SEAL's eyes that are really different than the average person's.
Mm.
It's hard to describe.
Okay.
We call it the 1,000-mile stare, and it's not a vacant look like shell shock. That's a whole different thing. This is a look that looks right into your soul,
Mm.
and sees you for who you are, and a look of like total confidence
Yeah.
and badassery.